The Catcher in the Rye. Holden Caulfield, a 16-year-old boy, is expelled from Pensy Prep, a prestigious boarding school, due to poor academic performance. He's not particularly upset about leaving, as he has always felt out of place among his peers. Holden feels disconnected from the people around him, viewing them as phonies who care more about appearances than genuine emotion. After a heated argument with his roommate, Stradlater, over a girl named Jane Gallagher, someone Holden deeply cares for, Holden decides to leave the school early and head to New York City, avoiding his parents until the official end of the term. Holden's journey to New York marks the beginning of his aimless adventure through the city, where he grapples with his feelings of alienation and confusion. He wanders the streets, checks into a hotel, and starts reaching out to people from his past, but each encounter only reinforces his sense of isolation. Holden is lost, both physically and emotionally, as he searches for meaning in a world he no longer understands. In New York, Holden tries to connect with others but consistently finds himself disappointed. He meets up with an old acquaintance, Carl Luce, who suggests that Holden see a psychoanalyst, highlighting Holden's inability to connect with others on a meaningful level. Holden also spends time reminiscing about his younger brother, Ali, who passed away from leukemia. Ali's death deeply affected Holden, and he often finds himself speaking to Ali as if he were still alive, using these conversations as a way to cope with his overwhelming emotions. As Holden drifts from one encounter to another, he seeks comfort in the familiar, old friends, favorite haunts, and even a prostitute named Sunny, though he ultimately refuses to go through with the transaction. His interactions are marked by a desperate need for genuine human connection, yet he consistently sabotages these opportunities due to his fear of vulnerability and his deep-seated belief that the world around him is inherently insincere. Holden's journey takes a turn when he sneaks into his family's apartment to visit his younger sister, Phoebe. Unlike others, Phoebe represents the innocence Holden longs to protect. She's the only person who truly understands Holden, and their interaction reveals Holden's deep desire to preserve childhood purity. Phoebe asks him what he wants to do with his life, and Holden responds with a fantasy of being the catcher in the rye, standing in a field of rye where he saves children from falling off a cliff, a metaphor for losing their innocence. This vision of himself as the protector of innocence highlights Holden's internal struggle. He is terrified of growing up and entering a world that he perceives as corrupt and fake. However, Phoebe challenges Holden, insisting that he can't just keep running away from his problems. This confrontation forces Holden to reflect on his own life and the path he is taking. Holden's mental state continues to deteriorate as he contemplates his future and the inevitability of adulthood. He fantasizes about escaping to the West, where he can live a simple, isolated life as a deaf-mute, free from the phoniness of society. However, his plan never materializes, as he realizes the impossibility of completely withdrawing from the world. Holden's sense of identity is fragile, and he struggles to find a place where he belongs. His interactions with others only deepen his sense of alienation, and he begins to lose hope that he will ever find the connection he desperately seeks. He becomes increasingly disillusioned with the world and himself, leading him to the brink of a mental breakdown. Holden's descent into despair reaches its climax when he visits the Museum of Natural History. The museum, with its unchanging displays, represents the permanence and stability that Holden craves. However, even this refuge is not enough to pull him out of his depression. He feels overwhelmed by the inevitability of change and the loss of innocence that comes with growing up. Holden's thoughts become increasingly erratic, and he contemplates suicide as a way to escape the pain he feels. He is haunted by the memories of Ali and the innocence he believes he has lost. In his darkest moments, Holden clings to the idea of protecting children from the harsh realities of life, but he is unable to protect himself from his own inner turmoil. In his final act of desperation, Holden decides to leave New York and say goodbye to Phoebe one last time. When he meets her, she surprises him by showing up with a suitcase, ready to run away with him. Touched by her innocence and love, Holden realizes that he cannot take her away from her life and dreams. This moment of clarity leads him to understand that he cannot continue running from his problems. Holden takes Phoebe to the Central Park Zoo, where they watch the carousel. As he watches Phoebe ride the carousel, he experiences a moment of peace and happiness. For the first time, Holden acknowledges that growing up is inevitable and that he cannot stop the world from changing. He realizes that he must learn to live with these changes and find his own way to navigate the complexities of life. The story concludes with Holden in a mental institution, where he reflects on the events that led to his breakdown. He admits that he misses many of the people he encountered during his journey, despite his earlier disdain for them. Holden's reflections suggest that he is beginning to come to terms with the complexities of life and his place in the world. Holden's journey through New York City is a profound exploration of adolescence, alienation, and the search for identity. Through his struggles, he begins to understand that life is full of contradictions and that acceptance, rather than escape, is the key to finding peace. Holden's story is a poignant reminder of the challenges of growing up and the importance of finding connections, even in a world that often feels overwhelming and insincere.